welcome everyone. Let's get started. Again, my name is Michael Benson. You're not here really hear from me. You're here to hear from these gentlemen and each other. So we'll dive right in. This is our, I came up with this fun title, From We Need Money to We Have Money, A Treasurer's Journey. Because how many times have we, whether we're a treasurer, former treasurer, aspiring treasurer, or just an interested party, thought, we need money, or wow, we have money, let's do something with it. Or somewhere else on that spectrum between the two, right? So I'd like to introduce the panel, or actually let them introduce themselves, and then we will dive in. So, Andrea, let's start with you. Who are you and where are you from?
I'm Andrea Minardi. I'm the upcoming treasurer for the MUNU chapter in Turin. I'm ending my master's degree in telecommunication engineering here in the Polytechnic in Turin.
Excellent. Welcome. Joe?
Yeah, sounds good. First and foremost, hey everyone, I'm Joe Green. I'm one of the two IEEE-HKN student governors, and I'm also an advisor for the Kappa Sigma chapter at Boston University. I've been on the e-board for a couple of years, 2 years as vice president, and last year I was president before assuming the role as advisor. And yeah, I'm excited to share my experience with you guys and help you find out how to fund your chapters a little bit better.
Awesome. And Kyle?
Hi, I'm Kyle Lady. I was the treasurer of the Beta Epsilon chapter and later the president, and was also a student governor on the HKN Board of Governors, and then a non-student governor as well. Yeah.
Kyle, as a fun fact, was actually the first ever student governor, I should say.
It is true. I don't know how fun it is.
It's a fact. With that said, welcome everyone. Thank you. And I see we have a number of folks in the audience, so thank you all for being here as well. What I'd like to do is, so we have folks from different size chapters, different age chapters, and also different budget sizes that do different things. And that's important to keep in mind too, that an organization's budget really only needs to be as large as its ambition. Right, and it's planned. So depending on what you're planning to do, you might need very little money, or you might need it a lot comparatively if you want to host a conference, let's say, or a concert, or who knows, right? Something that costs a lot of money. If, on the other hand, you're not going to be spending too much money and using publicly available goods, rooms for meetings, public parks, things like that, you don't really need money. So I want to keep, just start off with that and just note that what we hear from, say, Kyle related to Beta Epsilon, for example, or Joe with Kappa Sigma, may or may not be applicable, and the same obviously for Andrea and MUNU, simply because what their chapters are doing might be a little bit different from what your chapter is doing, and that's okay. It's part of our secret sauce, which Nancy likes to point out I say far too often, and it's probably true. But we are a community of communities. Every chapter is its own community. There's a lot that binds us together, but our diversity, our differences is part of our strength, right? Or our strength. So let's start, Andrea, with you if we could. Can you tell us a bit about MUNU chapter and the budget? Where do you get money from?
Yeah.
And what are some of the things that you might spend it on? And then we'll go to Joe and Kyle. So, same question.
Well, my story is a bit peculiar, I would say, mostly because I came into the chapter as the pandemic was kind of settling in our lives. So my experience with how the money was kind of running within the association was skewed by the actual pandemic. So most of it was we needed very little to do what we had to. But most of the things we did was online. So I don't know. You want to do some gathering that is a little bit more fancy. You find some platform that maybe costs something but not so much, and then the other. The income, then you ask maybe to your supervisor, or you ask to some kind of sponsorship, and you say, well, maybe we're going to do it in presence. We don't know if we need some kind of tent, some kind of place, and you ask to them. Being non-profit and being also very young, we kind of use the name of the association as a whole. We did something, but not as much as to say, well, give us the money, we'll make it work. So we are not at that point. The ambition is there, but we are going on the right path, I'd say. Michael, you're muted.
Yep, I was. Yes, I was. Thank you. I was delightfully muted. Joe, let's go. Same question to you next.
Yeah, sure.
What are some? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to Kappa Sigma, we're also a relatively new chapter. We were reactivated and held our first induction about 4.5 years ago. And it's been a bit interesting trying to secure a steady source of funding. We were able to work with the department to get a yearly stipend associated with our organization and recompense for helping them with some technical events and different things like that. So I think not just working with a department, but also trying to match a department's vision is a really good way of showing them the value in your organization. Like, we can help you accomplish this. Can you give us some funds so we can accomplish this? And on top of that, while the yearly amount was nice, we ran into the situation over the pandemic where we no longer had that funding. They cut funding for a lot of clubs. So all of a sudden we were dealing with the remaining funds we had from the last year to do the entire next about 1.5 years worth of operations, which gave us a really good crash course on budgeting. And I think that that's a really important aspect. Is there's a number of different ways to secure funding. A lot of those revolve around having a solid vision that you can sell someone on, not just what you're going to do, but what that's going to accomplish. And then once you get that funds, realizing that that's a finite amount of money too. So I think there's really 2 different aspects we can talk about moving forward, but just a couple of aspects to keep in mind beyond, what would the vision for your chapter be and why would people want to invest with you? The corollary side of that is, okay, how can we maximize the funds that we then get? And I found that one of the best tools for maximizing funds is collaboration. If you can work with your local IEEE section, that's a huge resource. If you can work with other student organizations to help levy different costs, that's a huge resource. If you can work with professionals or companies, heck, sometimes they go the extra mile when it comes to helping to fund your chapter. Sometimes in person, they would even buy all of us lunch. And that's a huge expense off of our back. So I think there's a couple of different options in terms of advertising yourself to get good funding from good sources and maximizing those funds.
Outstanding. Before Kyle, we go to you. I'd just say I put a poll in the poll area. If you could, for attendees, if you could respond to that, and we'll get to that in a moment. But Kyle, same question to you. Beta Epsilon funding sources and what we spend money on.
Yeah. So Beta Epsilon, in contrast to the other 2 chapters, has been around for a while. I believe it was founded in 1934. And over the years, we grew the chapter, and back in the, I think in the 90s, started selling donuts in like the atrium of the of the electrical engineering building. We sold donuts. IEEE set up a table at like the other end and started selling bagels. And so for a long time, they would bagel, there's a bagel stand, the donut stand. They eventually combined and started ordering pizza to sell. And then the department renovated the atrium and built us a little cafe area for us to operate out of, so that we could actually, not have to run to a fridge that's like 100 feet down the hallway. So a lot of the funding comes from the proceeds of the cafe. Even if you sell at cheap prices when your labor is all volunteer, it's very easy to make a lot of money. But it's not just that. Fortunately, because certainly during the pandemic, that wasn't much of an option. Beta Epsilon also has a pretty established corporate relations program where we have companies into like sponsor a meeting, and we try very hard to get them to like present something technical, not just a recruiting talk, so that people want to come to our meetings.
Yeah.
We charge them a price that more than covers the cost of the food for the meeting. Make profit off of that. Also have kind of more standard tech talks that are open to everybody, we serve pizza for that, and still make money off that. When the cafe was operational, we also then set up sponsorship so that a company could sponsor and say, buy free pizza for, essentially like make all of the pizza free for the day. And companies paid a lot because, we'd put up flyers around the building saying like, pizza today sponsored by Qualcomm. And they really like that. So, initiation fees. You can collect more than the amount required by headquarters. Many chapters do, and if nothing else, it helps to kind of offset the the variable cost of every person that joins. The food you fed them at meetings, the social activities they went to. It doesn't entirely, but it kind of helps deal with the problem of scale when you go from initiating 5 people to 50 and wanting to still buy them lunch. I think those are the main funding sources. We also work with the department do an annual faculty student mixer in partnership with the IEEE student branch, and the department pays us more than compensates us for that, we get to host a joint event with IEEE and also then with the department as like an official event being sponsored.
Thank you, Kyle. So as you can see, 3 very different types of programs related to finance. Some overlap, a lot of differences, and that's good. So my next question related to the poll is, as we can see, of the 8 or so people that have voted, if you haven't voted, please do go to the poll and let us know how if your chapter receives funding from your host department. If a chapter wants to get funding, so Joe, you said you used to receive funding, so a significant amount, then they cut it due to the pandemic,
yeah,
and you had to learn to budget. What resources did you find to help with that?
That's a great question. So when it came to developing and thinking out a budget, we found that first and foremost, talking to other chapters helped. It was also during that year, the past year, where I was also, for part of the time, student governor. And having these new connections really helped us in a pinch, because I was able to levy ideas off of the colleagues that I've made through that experience to be like, okay, we want to execute this idea, but we only have this much money to do it. How have you guys done it in the past? And being able to talk to people that I know have successfully done these operations in the past, I think was a huge, huge way for us to not reinvent the wheel. So that was one major resource. Another major resource we worked is, even though they weren't giving us funding, we were able to still work with many of the people in the department that wanted to see our club work. And I think that's one key aspect, is some of the best friends you can make as a chapter are the people in your department department or the people who did or are giving you money, because clearly they're invested in you. And that was absolutely great to be able to find other resources on campus to try to execute ideas. Like we wanted to hold a day of diversity event to build off of aspects that were happening at BU the last year. So we went to our department, we talked to them, and they're like, well, you know, GRISE has great sources of outside funding, and they did an event like this before. Maybe you can engage with them. So we went and talked to GWise and co-developed and co-hosted the event with them, which was absolutely phenomenal. So I think there's a lot of resources within HKN and within your university and department to really make you get the most bang for your buck when it comes to what you're planning to do.
Absolutely. Now, Andrea, in your situation,
yeah,
you said you're new to the role, but I know you're familiar certainly with the chapter, having been around for a little bit since induction. Moon new to something interesting with the teams, right? So every inducted member takes part in some aspect of
yes.
chapter operations, correct? Can you speak to that a bit? So
yeah,
that's something unique too that could be beneficial for folks related to this.
My speaking, most of what we do is mostly non-profit. Right, the most active parts of our chapter, for example, the tutoring aspect. So we basically talk to the teacher, to professors, and say, well, we have some highly qualified students within our chapter, so why don't you let us do the teaching when you fail, let's say, and we do it for free. The actual incoming of maybe money that we can ask, it's something that is coming up in the last period, mostly because we want to start to engage with the fact that now we can again do something in together in real life. Without the help of this virtual environment, and we would like to do some kind of like, for example, no-profit fundings and some kind of these kind of things that might help, for example, in getting some recognition between higher and sponsorships, because as of now, sponsorships come from smaller business, small medium businesses that are near us, or bigger associations within the Polytechnic that also help us in making our ideas come true. So that's also some kind of thing that I mostly am looking into, and I've looked into by being in the chapter for some period of time.
I have just put a poll in the poll area. Not Joe's question, although we'll get there. That is a really good question, Joe. IEEE members make up blank % of my chapter. Please take a second and vote now. And you'll see how this relates in a second, I promise. For those that haven't been in some of my prior sessions. For those that have, you probably know where this is going.
Mm-hmm.
One thing while folks vote, I wanted to kind of I guess talk a little bit about your relationship with your institution. At least in the U.S., companies certainly do like sponsorships, or like they might have a specific interest in your organization, but they also will go to your College of Engineering and say, we want to donate $50,000. Can you please just direct it to student orgs that do electrical engineering? And making sure that your department chair knows that you're there, making sure that your dean knows that you're there. Certainly if your dean is in an IEEE related field, make sure that they're a member, and if not, you should definitely initiate them. Same with your department chair. I I recommend folks, chapter presidents try to meet with their department chair, once every term, just to like talk about what the organization is doing. And that's an opportunity then, if you have specific things you would just want them to pay for, to ask. When I was president, I got my trip to the student leadership conference at Arizona State paid for. I was in my meeting with the department chair, explained that it'd be great to go and represent the University of Michigan, to all these other students, and I was wondering if they were able to help with funding, and he basically was like, yeah, sure, and walked me over to the department admin's office and said, make sure that Kyle's trip gets paid for, and so that was all covered instead of having to ask the chapter to do it.
Fantastic. So looking in the chat, we have a larger spread than I was expecting. So we have 50% of those that have voted said 100% of the chapters made up of IEEE members. One person said 75%, two people said 25%, one person said 10%. So I suppose it's a little vague, but when we induct anyone into IEEE to Kappa Nu, they either are or they become an IEEE member. Now, if you were counting your candidates for induction in the total, and I could see it being less than 100, but really it's 100. Because candidates will hopefully become IEEE full members. They're candidates for membership. So, as Kyle mentioned, you can certainly add a local induction fee on top of the fee that we charge through the headquarters. But the other thing too is all Eta Kappa Nu members are IEEE members. The converse is not true. All IEEE members are not HKN.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But the IEEE has a large organization. It has regions, 10 of them, sections, thousands of them, and they all have money, let alone technical societies and other organizational units that all have money, and many of which certainly would like to partner with you. IEEE Eta Kappa Nu chapters are somewhat unique within the IEEE world in the sense that we have a strong history of strong activity and a commitment to our core values of scholarship, character, and attitude that other aspects of the IEEE don't. And that's not a good thing or a bad thing, but it does set us apart in the sense that if a section is looking for a way to engage with students, HKN chapters are a phenomenal way to do that, in conjunction with the student branch too, of course. So sections have money. They're the closest other IEEE element, organizational unit, to our chapters. And if you don't know who's in charge of your local section, we can help you find out. If you go to rosters.ieee.org, we put that in the chat. But you can see who the contact people are. Reach out to them. Share with them what you're doing. Invite them to come to something. And more important, and then also too, ask them for some money if you have something specific that you want the money for. Again, every single HKN member is an IEEE member, and the sections are there to support IEEE members. So that is an untapped resource for many of our chapters. And Nancy, thank you for posting the rosters link. It really is a powerful tool that you can use.
And specifically, Benson, on that point, correct me if I'm wrong, but sections get their funding based on the number of members in the section, right?
Correct, including HKN members, yeah.
Exactly. When you're initiated, you become associated with your local IEEE section. For me, it's Southeast Michigan. And so, the amount of their funding that they get, is based on that. So, not only is it them helping you out, but their purpose is to help IEEE members, and that's why they're funded for it. And so, they're definitely a great resource.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So to recap for a second, we're not done, but just we've already had some really good ideas come from the panel. One great resource is your host department or departments. It was mentioned in an earlier session that if you are only sticking to, let's say, electrical engineering, which is the traditional department for the Eta Kappa Nu Association, we have, when we merge with the IEEE, you can expand now into other IEEE fields of interest. So computer engineering, computer science, those allied fields that are really part and parcel, very close to what you're doing. And that will vary based on the chapter, right? So reach out if it's multiple departments. Even better, that's 2 different department chairs that you can talk to about money if you're inducting people from, recruiting from those departments, for example. If it's a situation where maybe computer science, I know at Northeastern University, is an entirely separate college from engineering. Even better, that's a whole college then that you can recruit from, and a dean that you can talk to get money, right? So it depends on your campus and how things are structured. It's all different, but definitely do that. 2, IEEE sections are a phenomenal resource, along with regions, which are above the sections. They have money, like Kyle pointed out. Part of their whole reason of, they get money based on the number of IEEE members within the section and region. We all count in that, and part of their mission is to support IEEE members' activities, and students in particular. So definitely avail yourself of that. And there are other phenomenal resources too. So it was mentioned by Andrea and Kyle that companies are out there if they want to partner, Joe as well. Other organizations co-sponsor. Maybe you can provide something, volunteers, another organization could help secure a location for a venue, for example, right? So not everything has to be a financial exchange. HKN chapters, we have, a volunteer army in some sense, right? That you can say, all right, everyone, this is a great opportunity. If we go help with X, they'll help, whoever this is will help give us whatever for Y. So again, for a treasurer, I would just encourage you, current or future, be creative. Don't assume that it's all dollars and cents or whatever your local currency might be or might become, because it isn't. There are so many different ways to do that. With that said, I know 2 of our panelists do need to leave in about 5-6 minutes to head over to our candidates forum. And I'm sure some of our attendees actually do as well. So before we lose them, I'd like to open this up to the audience for additional questions or comments related to the treasurer's journey from we have money, or we need money, to we have money. And as we do so, just to get your brains going further, once you have funding, and Joe, I'm going to do this to you first because you started to touch on this. Budgeting is so critical, right? What are some tips or tricks that you might share? And Andre and Kyle, can go to you as well. You might have officers or members that want to do some really great things, but you might not have the resources at that time to do it. So what are some tips that you can share to help either rein in expectations or redirect people's energy to help securing the funding or do something within your budget?
I think that's a really, really good question, because just a bit of a personal story. We tried engaging with the IEEE Boston section last year for a hackathon we were co-sponsoring, and they kind of shot for the moon, we'll say, when it comes for the per person fee for the hackathon. So we proposed it to the IEEE Boston section, and they're like, we're not going to spend that much money on that few people. Like, go back and do some better budgeting sort of deal. So I think it's a pretty good reality check at the conception stage of your event to really think about, okay, how much do we really want to invest on this activity? And if you find that you have ambitions to do something, but not necessarily the money to do it, that also shouldn't be a limiting factor, in the sense that if you rein in those expectations or you try to find some creative solutions, that can go a long way towards making sure your chapter is enabled to have the effect that you envision. So as we said before, corporate sponsors is great. If you can work with a department to hold something, that's great. They might chip in a little bit of money. If you find that food is very expensive, for example, maybe you can either rein in the amount that you're offering or do food every other event versus every event to still have that incentive there, but not need it every single time. And I think really one thing to do when it comes to planning any of these events is leave an extra wiggle room. Like, you can calculate it down to a cent. Like, we're going to do $301.59 for this event. I usually, just for the sake of safety, like adding 10% on top of that estimated amount, just in case something goes over or something goes awry, or we have a hidden cost in there sometime. And that can really help you at the beginning of the semester, make sure you're not losing too much money by the end of the semester. So there's just a couple of things that have helped me in the past, but if there's any more specific questions, either in the chat or you want to send me personally, I'll be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Let's go Kyle, then Andre, because I know Kyle, you need
Sure.
to do this.
Yep. Yeah. couple of additional items, similar to what Joe said about, at the start of an event, at the start of your semester, sit down and, with your officers and, ask them what they want to do and start getting an approximate price. And maybe they don't know what which social event they want to do, but you can kind of say like, okay, well, your budget for every social event is going to be $200. And so figure out, make sure that, you either do a cheap one and then an expensive one, or, figure out how to use it. The other one is, at least if you're in the US, you should be able to either use your university's tax status or IEEE's tax status to not pay sales tax. It is a pain at some vendors. It is a pain to get registered and like file the appropriate forms. But especially if you don't have a large budget, that's, 6-8%, more that you would have had to pay for that. So, it might be worth doing the work to like get registered at a couple of places and then say you have to go buy from these places because we can, save there.
Well put. Okay, Andre?
Well, in budgeting, we are kind of elite in this sense, because being a smaller chapter, the amount of money that we have to work with kind of leaves with little room to fail. So we might have to, being of course smaller, the help that comes with the community that we create. So of course, maybe you want to do some social gathering, some kind of community bonding type of thing, and usually you would want something that is a little bit more on the party side or something like that. And whereas maybe if you want to manage better your money, you just go with something like everyone brings something, and then the cost is kind of split. You as an association, you don't have to spend that kind of money, you spend it indirectly, and then you can use that kind of money to build your brand bigger, do some kind of hackathon, some kind of conference with other bigger companies, so that you can of course create some kind of networking that way, and then go up in this kind of manner. That's also another way to kind of smooth the impact of the money on the chapter.
Well put. I know Kyle and Joe, you probably have to head out in a second. So any final comments from you before you do, as related to treasurers and the journey, getting money, managing money, all that?
Yeah, sure. If you don't mind me just adding one last brief comment
Go
here.
ahead,
I definitely just want to reiterate that the best way to get people on your side when it comes to getting money from them, whether it's a department, a company, another organization, be solid in your vision. And I do ask this whenever you're starting a new semester as a chapter, or a new year as a semester, is think about what you want to accomplish in terms of your effect on campus, outside of the nitty gritty of we'll do this event that will draw these people and blah, blah, blah. What's the message you want to send as an organization? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, people are going to invest in you, a chapter, for your vision and what you're going to do with that money, versus the nitty gritty of like, we're going to do this event, which will have this many people and this many companies and so on and so forth. So really, I think the best advertising tool you have in your pocket is what your chapter means to your community and also to yourselves. I think it's a great practice to just talk about that at your next chapter or e-board meeting.
Well put. And Kyle, you put a phenomenal point in the chat, if you want to touch on it briefly before you go, about other types of things, and the tax status.
Sure. I mean, what I put in the chat was that, something like a local grocery store, your cashier isn't going to know what to do if you show up and like ask for, the tax advantage. But business-oriented places, in my area, there's a place called Gordon Food Service that like caters to businesses, and like they know exactly what to do, you know, when you want to use that status. You just have to, you know, register with them. My final pieces of advice. Hello, this is my dog Allie. She is adorable. Two pieces of advice: file your taxes, as many organizations, many student organizations, unless you're like officially part of your university, and not just like registered, but actually like affiliated. You know, if you have a tax ID, it means you need to file your taxes annually. You don't have to pay tax, but you still have to file documents. If you don't, you lose your nonprofit status. And two, don't put off filing like receipts. Don't put off paying reimbursement. You will just hate yourself and probably make a mistake at some point. Just do it when it's quick and easy.
Well put. So let's thank our two panelists that are leaving. We get to keep Andrea for a little bit longer, I hope. But thank you both. And Kyle, we'll see you over on the back end over there in about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Very much.
Now, Nancy notes in the chat, and it's, thank you, John. Important to see, too. There's a page on IEEE.org that has tax information. So, and I believe, Nancy, if you want to come on screen, you can explain this perhaps better than I. That's not just for US-based taxes. I believe there's information there for our other, non-US. Oh, I'm incorrect. Oh, go ahead.
Nope, it's mostly for US, but again, the tax information is there. So we file under IEEE's EIN number. So especially if you're a newer chapter, you don't have an EIN number. Might go Beta Epsilon's an older chapter, and you make a certain amount of money. So if you make under 50K, and we ask you that on your annual report, you don't have to file your own under your own EIN number.
Fine.
Good correction. Thank you.
Italy, I know in Italy, because I worked with the chapter when ReNew was formed, you have to apply for a special status under the Italian government. So you have a very special situation in Italy of how you had to file legally to create this organization.
Yep.
So your chapter understands that. Your Professor Montucci understands that. So when that chapter was formed, I was very much involved. So I'm familiar with that. But so I don't want chapters to worry that you have to file your own with the IRS. If you're not getting anything, if you get a postcard, you get anything from the IRS, call me. Scan it, send me a copy of it, and we'll go over it. But what I put there is the 501c3 determination letter. Sometimes you might need that. And then IEEE is tax exempt in certain states. Other states might extend tax exemption to you, but certain states, they have granted IEEE tax exemption. So when the SLC was in Florida, that was IEEE's tax exempt in Florida. We didn't pay tax on the running the hall or the food or anything else. So sometimes that can help you out. But the tax information is at IEEE.org. But again, just please contact me, reach out, because we'll certainly help you through this. We're not always tax exempt. Sometimes people say, you're not, but IEEE is a 501c3, which is a charitable organization under IRS laws. So unless you're getting a big donation, someone's looking for a charitable letter, then we have to talk, because we could accept that for you under the IEEE Foundation. So I don't want to get into too many details here, the weeds, but if you're having at all questions to that, please, reach out, because I don't want to frighten anyone. It's not that bad. We are covered under IEEE. So.
And Nancy is not only a phenomenal resource, she's the resource for all this. So just to echo something she just said, if something comes up and you're unsure about, particularly if you get something from the IRS from the United States, scan it, send it to her, call her, email her, talk to her. She will help you figure it out. She does this. Don't stress. We'll
work it through.
Yeah. With that, we have a few minutes left. What I'd like to do is, I see we have a number of treasurers in our audience. So if there's anything that we didn't cover here, either questions you have or things that you do for your chapter that you think might be useful to share, please go ahead and request to share your audio and video. Join us on screen and either ask or share, or if you prefer, feel free to put it in the chat, and we can we'll read it off and try to answer that. So for anyone that is a treasurer, or really truly anyone here, if you have questions related to the treasurer's journey and role, we definitely want to hear from you. Again, a treasurer is one of the 6 required roles that IEEE Eta Kappa Nu requires our chapters to have. It's pretty darn important. So
well, it's a great resume. It's a great resume item, right? Any officer position. But if you're the treasurer, and again, you can really talk about handling of finances. I always talk about what these things prepare you for in your career, when you're going into your career. So treasurer, please don't just count the importance of being able to explain that you actually were a treasurer for an organization. This is a skill set that is important to employers. It will be important to you in your career and your life. But budgeting, understanding money, pretty big thing.
It's one of the things that they tell us when you first get inducted is think about getting to the board, because all the things that you then do are kind of soft skills that then become hard skills. Like it's okay budgeting your own finances. It's like a little bit of money, but then when you start and looking at the 10K and then say what the hell do I have to do with this kind of money? It kind of becomes ingrained in you how to manage money and how to very well coordinate everything as to not.
Right. If you're going to be an engineering project manager, you're going to have a budget to manage.
Right.
If you're going to manage people, I manage the IEEE-HKN budget. Right. You have to be able to do all kinds of things with budgeting and numbers. So it starts, like I said, to flex those muscles, and you're going to need them.
Absolutely. And, with that too, it doesn't really matter how large or small your budget may be. It's more, are you able to manage it? Can you be innovative, perhaps, if something comes up and solve the challenge, whatever it might be? And what do you learn from it, right? Like with anything. So the one other thing I wanted to touch on before our time expires in a couple of minutes is we talked about, best ways to manage chapter funds. Many of our chapters have accounts with their department or with the university's student organization, bank, whatever it might be. And that's great. What I would suggest, though, is your chapter finances shouldn't be a black box. And what I mean by that is, as a treasurer or as an officer or an advisor, too, you should have insight into what's happening. And so, too, should your active members. So what I like to recommend to chapters is at least once per academic term, the treasurer should share with the chapter an overview of the chapter's financial standing, right? Ideally, the chapter should be voting on a budget, but not all chapters can do that, and that's okay. But if nothing else, your officers really should be voting on the budget, and ideally, striving to the point where you have active engaged chapter then would vote and approve your budget. Because it's their money too, right? As a treasurer, you're the steward of it, but ultimately it's overall it's the chapters. So I know some do that, some don't, but I do want to put that out there that transparency with regard to funds is important. It also helps to ensure that if there's a mistake, it's caught quickly, can be hopefully corrected. And also too, on the other side of things, if there is perhaps something less than honorable, not you, of course, but your, let's say, a predecessor or something else, or a vendor that perhaps overcharges, someone else might be able to see that and have experience with them and could share that with you as the treasurer. So sharing some of that information is important. I'd also caution against oversharing, because that also is not helpful. So there is a fine line there. We can help you with that, but for example, don't share your account number, right?
That's the first one. That's a pretty important one.
Yeah. So excellent. With that said, is there anything from anyone else here, or from anyone on the Nancy or Andrea? And we should probably need to end this in a couple of minutes so we can, those of us that need to get over to the candidate forum. And I encourage everyone to attend that regardless, to watch and meet our candidates and hopefully ask them questions too.
Yeah, please ask questions, because these are people that are going to run for the board, and the board have fiduciary responsibility for IEEE at a cap and you. In other words, they're responsible to make sure we have the funds that we need to run the organization, and also to spend them wisely. So I work closely with them. Of course, I'm the assistant treasurer, but this is a very responsible position, and the board represents you. In IEEE, we're the only one that the chapters elect the board. This is unique. This is nowhere else in IEEE does this happen. So you as a chapter get a say in the governing of the organization. So please do that. That's one of your rights as a chapter, as an active chapter, is to elect your representation.
Absolutely. With that, any final questions or comments from anyone in the audience? Heard from from Andrea. Thank you so much for serving. I will
Thank
also
you for having me.
thank you to Andrea. We'll do this again next week as well. Andrea has been one of our backstage production volunteers and has been outstanding. Now it's a little late into 9 p.m. your time, so
Yeah.
We thank you for this oddly scheduled timed thing, and truly couldn't.
But I'll be here until the end at my midnight, so
yes,
I don't mind.
Thank you.
I'd like to. Go.
Yes, SLC in Italy one of these days.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right. Thank you all, everyone.